Stop bullshitting me. Don't take the president for granted. I want a deal within a week or two. You will not be bailed out next time. These are the words of President Joe Biden aimed directly at Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if recent reports are anything to go by. The US president is furious. He feels blindsided by Netanyahu ever since the back-to-back assassinations of Hezbollah's senior-most commander Fuad Shukr and Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh. And now he has sent a warning Israel's way. So why is the US unhappy about the deaths of leaders of two terrorist groups? What does it want from Israel? And why is Israel failing to oblige? The White House is disappointed with the way last week panned out. Israel eliminated two of its biggest enemies in two capital cities, Beirut and Tehran. Fuad Shukr, the right-hand man of Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in Lebanon, and Ismail Haniyeh, the political chief of Hamas, was killed in Iran. These actions have once again brought the Middle East to the brink of a wider regional war, with Hezbollah and Iran gearing up to retaliate. Axios reports that Biden and his top aides are deeply frustrated by the fallout from Israel's assassinations in Beirut and Tehran, which took place less than a week after Netanyahu's first visit to the Oval Office in 4 years. In a tough phone call, Biden is said to have lost his cool on Netanyahu. Channel 12 reported that Biden told Netanyahu to, and I quote, "stop bullshitting him and to not take the president for granted." Biden also warned Netanyahu that if he escalates again, the US will not bail him out. Both Hamas and Hezbollah are known terror groups, so why is the US so concerned? Now, it is not as if the USA's heart is bleeding out for Shukr, who was involved in the killing of 241 US Marines in Beirut in 1983, or Haniyeh, who was seen celebrating the October 7 attack. But here's why the US is furious. Firstly, it is the timing of these attacks that did not sit well with Biden. He told Netanyahu that the assassination of Haniyeh was poorly timed, occurring just as the Americans were hoping to reach the endgame of the process. He expressed concern that conducting the operation in Tehran could trigger the wider regional war he has been striving to prevent. And secondly, the US feels blindsided. The Israelis apparently kept the assassination plans a top secret, keeping the information from leaking out even to the US, which had only days ago hosted Netanyahu at the White House. The Americans had been under the impression that Israel was working on negotiating a ceasefire deal with Hamas. But what did it do instead? It bombed the leading Hamas negotiator sitting at the other end of the table. And this brings us to the third reason why Biden is not happy with Netanyahu. Because he has come to question whether his Israeli counterpart even wants a ceasefire deal in the first place. You see, Biden's goals are pretty straightforward. He wants to ensure that a historic peace deal is finalized, ending the war in Gaza before his term ends. He has already been forced to step out of the 2024 presidential race, so he has only 6 months. That's very little time left. It's natural for an outgoing president to feel disheartened about the possibility of leaving behind a legacy marked by 2 wars, one in Ukraine and the other in Gaza. This is why he is personally involved in the talks and wants a hostage and ceasefire deal within weeks. An Israeli official recalled that Biden raised his voice and said that he wants a deal reached within a week or 2 weeks. Here's what Biden told the Israeli Prime Minister, and I quote, "We are at an inflection point. We need to do everything to end the war and reach regional stability, even if the deal is not perfect. Hamas wants the deal right now. It might change." But while Biden simply wants a deal to secure his legacy, regardless of its contents, it is not as simple for Netanyahu. He told Biden that he appreciates American support, and as Prime Minister of Israel, he acts solely according to the security needs of the State of Israel. Netanyahu is being accused of adding new conditions for the deal with Hamas. The new proposal reportedly demands the implementation of an inspection mechanism to ensure combatants cannot move to the northern part of the Strip. It's not clear how this will be done yet. And further, he wants to retain control of the Philadelphia corridor. This is a narrow strip of land that runs along the entire border between Gaza and Egypt. The route is about 14 kilometers in length. The IDF has discovered dozens of tunnels that pass through this corridor. Netanyahu wants indefinite control of this route so as to prevent the flow of weapons and militants into Gaza. The idea is to prevent the resurgence of Hamas after the drubbing it has received in the last 10 months. An Israeli official said that Israel considers Rafah, the major city in south of Gaza, to be part of this corridor, meaning its forces would remain there. This condition was not featured in the draft submitted to Biden in May, and members of Netanyahu's own negotiating team believe that it could collapse the deal altogether. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and IDF Chief Herzi Halevi reportedly informed Netanyahu that his insistence on new terms will sabotage the hostage deal negotiations. They don't want the Philadelphia corridor to become an obstacle before the return of the hostages. But Netanyahu is apparently well aware of this, and he has pushed forward anyway. And there are more issues, trust issues in particular, which have stalled the talks. You see, Israel simply does not trust Hamas. Hamas is at the receiving end of relentless IDF airstrikes, and it is desperate for the fighting to end. So there's a chance that Hamas could use the talks as a ruse to get Israel to withdraw and buy time as a result to recuperate and strike back. Israel wants to make it clear that during the talks, it can get up and leave at any point that it suspects that Hamas is simply stretching out the talks with no intention of actually coming to a final agreement, all while hostilities remain paused. That would be a huge deal breaker for Israel. In fact, this is the line that Netanyahu used to blame Hamas for the failed talks in Cairo. In a statement, his office said, Hamas continues to demand an end to the war in the enclave after releasing a few hostages, seized the chance to flood the Gaza Strip with weapons, regain control over it, and again commit the massacre of October 7. An interesting quote from an Israeli official to The Telegraph puts things in perspective. Biden told him not to respond too harshly to Iran's attacks, and Iran knew this, which is why they exploited the situation to attack Israel. His true agenda is to support Israel fully, and he has done so far for decades. Netanyahu knows this, which is why he's being more bold and feels confident that he can attack Israel's enemies and still have the full support of the US. You see, Netanyahu has two choices. Either he can obey the US president or do things his way. So far, he has done things his way. He was urged by the US to rethink the ground invasion of Gaza, but he went ahead. He was then warned not to invade Rafah, and again, he went ahead anyway. Biden's efforts to restrain him have not been very effective. With Biden in office, especially during an election campaign, Netanyahu knew that he had a long rope. Biden is committed to Israel and has ensured the flow of billions in military aid despite being involved in another war in Ukraine. Now that Biden has called an end to his campaign, he is much weaker, which means that there's a power vacuum that Netanyahu can take advantage of and carry out bold operations such as Haniyeh's assassination. This is exactly what both American and Israeli officials see happening. Netanyahu is emboldened by recent events in US politics. From the Democrats to the Republicans, he knows he has enough allies to back him up, but none strong enough to restrain him.